I hope that you remember me from last month. We did a small intro with Construct 2. So, since it was kind of like an interesting change of pace, we're going to, Robert, okay, there you go. We are going to check a little bit of Construct 3. And then, because basically everyone wanted to go about like GTA's beautiful. Okay, wanted to create a little bit of a tower defense. That's what we're going to cover today. So first thing first, we are going to welcome you to Construct 3. I am going to show you the page. It's a little bit different from what we had before for Sira. Before it was www.sira.com. Now it's just construct.net. So they want to. Uh, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Um, and we are going to check a little bit about that. So I'm going to show you how it looks, the page, and where you have to go. It's not nothing really complicated. And that's something else that I'm going to show you later. So construct.net is going to take you here, and you're going to see that right now just telling you try construct 3. So why try, why not buy or anything like that is because construct 3 right now it's on beta. So they have said that the model how it's going to work is similar to construct 2. And basically with construct 2 what you had was a free version and a paid version that you only had to pay it once, and then it was yours. Now, as far as I know, Construct 3 is going to have a free version, similar to what we are going to see on the beta today, and then you can have to pay an annual fee to keep using it. Why an annual fee? Why not like Construct 2? Basically, because Construct 3 is an online version of Construct 2 and, well, improved. That's why if you notice at the bottom here, perhaps you're going to notice a little bit of different OS is because I'm running this on Mac. And, well, of course, you can run it on a Windows machine or Linux or almost anything that you can use for with a browser. So I think some of the demos that they were showing, they were they were running on a tablet, even on a phone. Although I think everything is going to be too compact to make it work. But well, whatever. If you go to construct.net, that we have it here, then you should be able to click on Try Construct 3. That's going to take you to the free trial that you see here and a little bit more of information. And then you can say Launch Construct 3. I already did it because the first time it's basically loading the entire program on your browser. So I didn't want the stream to basically interfere with the downloading. So I just did it. And I don't know if you guys are ready, but it would be kind of cool to start creating our own tower defense game. What do you guys think? I hope that you agree. So if not, I guess I can try to do another kind of game for future sessions, but today is going to be tower defense. So the first thing that you should do, well, I'm just going to go really quick through the starting page for Construct 3. So you're going to have the starting project and some of the demos, since you're using basically the full stream, like the full screen, I'm sorry, thinking too much about the screens. Then I think things are a little bit cleaner. So, and you also have the menu over here. One of the cool things is that now you can save a version of your project locally. So you save a copy of your game there and you can upload it every time that you open Construct 3. You also can save it on a cloud provider like Google Drive or Microsoft's OneDrive or Dropbox or something like that. Or I think there's a third option that is to save it on your browser. So your browser has a little bit of memory that is allotted to it, so it can save it there too. But well, I am just going to click on New Project. We have to give it a name, so I'm just going to call it Tower Defense. And we can change this from the get-go, but I'm not going to do anything with it, so I'm just going to say create. And now, if you remember construct 2, this is going to look a little bit familiar. Still on the left side, you're going to have properties, and on the right side, you're going to have like some other things like, well, the project itself and the layers and objects that we're going to be using. But then I'm going to jump for a second to my presentation. Yes, we're going to follow it. I don't have many slides. It's just basically to give you a little bit of a visual cue of what I'm talking about. So, tower defense game. So far I'm just going to call it the Siege of Atlanta. And yes, you can ask Andrew about that and see how that goes. And we're going to need 3 main things: enemies, the path that the enemies are going to follow that is going to be created by the maze, and the towers or the turrets, because, well, these guys are British, so they call it just the turrets. So let's start with the enemies, right? So I'm going to jump back, and we can also make the presentation available later. Yeah, sure. Like most of the steps that we're going to follow here are going to follow what I put here, but obviously we're going to cover it here on the screen. So let's focus on the enemies. So well, we have it here, and these are the steps that we're going to follow. We're going to create a new sprite. We're going to give it a behavior, and then we need to say where these enemies are going. And to start with, we're going to create one enemy, right? So let's create that. So we double click to be able to create a sprite that we did basically the same thing last time. And here you can draw whatever you want, or you can find some assets online. Like actually for one of my groups of Construct 2, Steve Bushy gave me some codes that perhaps I can give away at the end if someone is interested in that. And I am just going to try to follow the same thing that you have in one of the templates. So I'm going to create, at least try, like a little triangle here, and that's going to be our enemy, right? And I'm just going to close. We have a gigantic thing here, so I'm just going to make it a little smaller, and this is going to be our enemy. Just to make it simpler, instead of like naming it sprite, I'm going to call him enemy, which makes sense, right? So that was step 1 of what we had here in the presentation: create a new sprite. If you don't want to create this little triangle, like I said, you can find some assets online. Here, for example, is one that is the tower defense from Steve. But right now we have the enemy, and this one tells us give the pathfinding behavior to the enemy. So how do I do that? Basically, I select the enemy, and if you remember, on the left side we have behaviors almost in the middle. So you click there, and then you can add a new behavior. So the one that we need for this one is pathfinding. And of course, I am using the search box over here, so I can get it really quick. Pathfinding. That's it. Now, the third step is telling me give it a destination and tell it to move. So this is really like 2 steps. So to do that, we have to go to the event sheet and to tell the enemy, now find a path to a certain point and then start moving. So I could just say like a coordinate, but since you're going to see a little bit later, it's much easier to create another sprite. So I'm going to do that, double click, sprite. And this one can be just like a little square, and I'm going to make it, I don't know, red square. That's fine. Make it little, like I said. And this one, I am going to call it goal. And now we go to the events. So we were here on the layout. Now I move to the events. And you see that now in Construct 3 is telling me a little bit what you are supposed to do here. It's trying to give you hints of what you can do in every tab that you have with Construct. So we're going to add an event. And the first thing, if you remember, is to say this event is affecting what, or when does it happen? So I could say when the game starts, so we would be using system, but because I already done this a few times, it's much easier if we just say enemy. And in this case, on the search box, I'm going to type create, or in this case, uncreated. So basically, every single time that an enemy is created is going to do this. What is it going to do? Well, the action that I am going to add here, and that's also going to affect the enemy. And we can scroll down a little bit, and you see that the pathfinding actions are here, including the most obvious one. Construct now tries to give you hints that in this case is find path. So you see here that it's giving you, well, asking you some coordinates. So obviously if we say 0, 0, that would be here on the corner, like the corner of our screen. This is 0, 0. And I could give manually, okay, that's a bundle, perfect. I could also give manually here the coordinates, but that's why I created this goal. So I could say goal dot x and goal dot y. So right now construct 3, I'm sorry. So we used to say construct 2 is basically telling the enemy move to this, or find a path. I'm sorry, find a path to this coordinate, and it doesn't really matter where the goal is. So now if I move the goal, the coordinate or the path that is going to be looking is going to be different. So that's really good, because then we don't have to hard code this coordinate. If we made several levels, we would just change the position that we want for the goal. So this is the first part of the instructions that I was giving you. That is, give it a destination. We did that. Now we need to do the tell it to move. That's when things begin to get a little bit more interesting. So we go back to the events, going to add another one. This also affects the enemy. So we pick the enemy, we can double click on it, and we can scroll down again to look for the events that affect the pathfinding. And you can see that, that there are several things that have to do with pathfinding. The one that I want is on path found, is this one, on path found. Why do we have to ask that? Because if you create a maze, there is a chance that there's not a path between the enemy and the goal. So that's why there's another event that says on failed to find path. If you create a closed maze, then the path is never going to be found. But let's assume for a second that the path is found. Then the action that we have to do, or to execute, also has to do with the enemy, and is called move along path. So again, if you don't find it manually there, you can just type on it and move along path. This is the one that we want. And I think we're ready to test it. So just like in Construct 2, we have this little like play button here, or preview. And this is going to open a small window. And this is exactly, if we did it correctly, this is exactly what should happen. So I'm going to do it again, so you guys can see it. It finds the path, and immediately it starts moving whenever that happens. So far is nothing amazing, but we have enemies already that are working. So out of the 3 things that I told you that we needed, that are enemies, the path itself, or the maze that we're going to put there, and the towers, we already have one of them, that is the enemy. So we're kind of like a third way, like on the basics of a tower defense game. Now, making more enemies. Right now we have only one enemy, so that's interesting, but not that interesting. So how do we do it? So we're going to follow something similar to what we did with the goal. We're going to pick an origin for the enemies. Then we're going to decide how often do we want the enemies to be created, and then we're going to create it, right? Having to use solve for x. There you go. um, so to create the origin, I could again double click and create another sprite and just move it around. But one of the cool things that I want to show you, and yes, every single step has been thought for showing you different parts of Constructive, is that if you already have an existing object that is similar to what you want, you can clone it. So if I get on the goal, I can like right click. In the case of my Mac, I have to click basically with 2 fingers. And I can say clone object type. So what this is doing is not copying this one. This is something that we did last time. It's not really. This is not a different instance of the original goal. This is a different one, and you can see it on the name. This one says goal. That's its name, and this one is goal 2. Yes. Just to make it a little bit different, I'm going to name it origin, and I am going to change the color, right? So we can differentiate them. So I'm going to say some sort of green, right? And then I am going to move it over here. So first thing on my instructions, it's done. Pick an origin point for the enemies. Now, I'm going to decide how often I want to create new enemies. So to do that, sorry, I am going to go to the events, and I'm going to add a new one. So add event. Now, this event is going to be a little bit different because it's not really, the action is going to affect the enemies, but the event itself has to do with time, because we're going to say every X seconds we want to create a new enemy. So that means that we're going to use system. It's not one of the objects that we have already created, but it's going to be the system. And the system obviously here talks about the system that is being used to run the game. So in this case, it's going to be my browser. But if you had exported this to a tablet, it could be your iPad or whatever, or it could be your phone. So this is the way that we're going to communicate somehow with the system. So I'm going to pick it, double click, and in this case it's going to be every. So there are 2 options for that, every tick or every X seconds. So I'm going to pick that one, every X seconds. Every tick is basically every iteration of the game, so it's going to be done multiple times per second, or you hope so, if the game is running, I don't know, around at least more than 30 frames per second or 30 ticks per second. But here with the every X seconds, you can decide how often. So I'm just going to say, yeah, 1 second it's okay, but I could change it and say 1.1 or 1.2 or 5 seconds, whatever. So 1.1. So every 1.1 seconds, I am going to add an action. And we could do it 2 ways, but I'm going to use the origin since we already created, so let's use it. So I'm going to double click on origin. And the origin can spawn new objects. So, of course, I can search for spawn, and it says spawn another object. Then it tells me, okay, which object do you want to spawn? Click to choose, tells you which ones you can pick. This case is going to be the enemy. And right now we're not going to delve into this, but you could say that it's on a different layer or on a different image point. So this is especially useful when we're going to use the towers, because we can talk about different points. So let's use this. Now, I created this original event on purpose to mix with this one. Why? Because if we were not doing it this way on enemy created, then here, when the new enemy is created, I would have to say find the path. But since I am already saying whenever an enemy is created, find the path, then it's going to do it every single time that this event is triggered. So basically, every 1.1 seconds, this is going to be triggered. that creates a new enemy, and that action triggers the original event. So I try to economize as much as I can. So let's see if that works. So the original enemy, and now you're going to see that every second, basically, a new enemy is created, and it finds the path, and it begins to move, because, of course, when I say that I created the new enemy, it finds the path, and when the path is created, then it moves along the path. Yes, conditionals. So basically, I did a nested conditional. So if we actually do it like in the right order, let's move them. I did something wrong. That's not what I want, Mac. Uncreated, on path. Basically, it would be something like this. So this is the first event. That one is going to trigger the second, and this one is going to trigger the third. But of course, well, they don't have to be in order. It's just that it could be easier for you to understand it this way. Just that I started with this because it makes sense. So let's see on our instructions. We picked the origin, we decided how often we were going to do it, and we created the enemy and tell it where to go. So we already did all these steps. So we're done. And we're done with the enemies. So now we're going to go for the path. So we have to decide right now, because I don't have any kind of like obstacles between my enemy and my goal, or the origin and the goal. It just goes in a straight line, which is a little bit boring, right? So usually it would be kind of cool if we had some sort of path, or even if you could create some sort of maze. So let's see, what do we have here? We have to create a new sprite that is going to be a wall. We are going to give it the solid behavior. Yes, pathfinding, of course. And then we're going to manually create this path that the enemies are going to follow. So let's do the steps. Number one, create a new sprite. So I am going to double click, say sprite. Obviously, you can use whatever color you want. So let's do like some sort of, I don't know, purple. Is that something like that? What do I know? You guys can use whatever colors you want. Okay. I'm not going to delve so much of that. And I am going to make it a little flatter. And the next step is give the solid behavior. So we select my little sprite, go for behaviors, click on add new behavior, and that one is right here. But if you don't find it, you just start typing and it's going to be a solid. There you go. Also, what is this going to be, like this little thing here? So this is going to be my wall. So I'm going to rename it to that. And now let's just try with one wall and test it. And now you can see that depending on where they are, my enemies begin to move in a different direction, because the pathfinding begins to work. But of course, just one obstacle, yeah, it starts simplified. It doesn't work so well as you would find. So let's create for a second. This is not really like part of it, but let's create for a second a small. Well, I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to change the angle 90 degrees, so we have something like that. So I'm going to try to do something like this, and you're going to see that it's smart enough that it says like, hey, I can go around here. So we're going to try to do something. Oops. I wanted to go like on a zigzag kind of thing. And this one, perhaps I should kind of make it a little wider or something like that. Now, this is the path that I wanted to go to, zigzag. But I'm almost certain that it's going to fail, because it's going to say like, hey, I'm not stupid enough. I can go out of the screen and then just go back where I need. Why? Because I have here this entire area that is my scenario, all the wide area that we have here, it can try to do the pathfinding over there, right? So how do I do that? Well, I would like to show you one of the most stupid tricks that you can do, but it's incredibly useful. And it just create a box around it, right? So I am going to make certain that this is the path, and well, of course, this one is wrong. So this is the path that I want my enemies to go. More out of bounds play. Okay. There you go. So now if we get it right, we should have enemies being created every second, and we have a little path that they are going to follow. Okay? So it begins to take a little bit of shape. Of course, this is a really simplified maze, and you can give it any shape that you want. Things that I would like to point out at this point. If you pick your enemy, you are going to see a few things that you can modify here on the behavior, especially on pathfinding. And they have to do with the cell size, max speed, rotate speed, things like that. So what do they, why are they needed? And well, and you can see here that also we can change if it uses the obstacles, the solids. So that's why these walls that I added here, they are solids, and that's why it works automatically, because that's the default. But we could even say like, hey, I don't want those ones. I want something else that is custom, and you can add them. But we're not going to do that, at least not for this session. So what is this thing with the cell size? Like someone mentioned there, well, GGDA mentioned that this is A-star algorithm. Yes, it is. And basically is going to divide the entire scenario into small cells, in this case of 30 pixels by 30 pixels, so they are square cells. And those cells are the ones that are used to calculate what is the best path to go from point A to point B. Now, let's suppose that somehow I make my enemy too big. So then it's not going to be able to feed on the cells, and it's not going to be able to move around. Oh, well, apparently it is. Okay, I didn't do it like big enough. Okay, let's make it bigger. Oh, come on, seriously? There you go. Well, it's basically in... Are you kidding me? Okay, of course, several times when I'm trying it on my own, it doesn't work. But when I want to show that it fails, it does work. Okay, still, sometimes you may find... yes, you may find that the cells and it's also the rotation speed and angles and all that, if it's too small, it could be something to do with that. Also, if you make the path like too narrow, something like this should work better for what I wanted to show. Yes, that works better. Collision shape on sprite, yes. Okay, thank you. That's a perfect... okay, Brian, perfect. Like you have that. Yes, is going to be using the collision shape, and I'm going to show you that for a second, and then we can continue. So I'm going to double click on my wall, and if you go here, where is it in this one? I didn't check that beforehand. So they changed a little bit how things were in Construct 2. It's on the left side. So of course, show last frame. Of course, where are you, man? Well, somewhere. Toggle grid, configure grid, no. Well, in Construct 2, I had it here. That is the collision shape for this. So I have to figure out how in Construct 3 where it is. I don't even know if it's one of the features that is already out there. But it should be here. Okay? So yes, it's basically taken into consideration the shape of the wall. So in this case, it would be a rectangular collision shape. And in this case, tries to make a triangle. And that's what is going to take into account if it's going to collide or not. And of course, what I said about the cell size for the algorithm. But okay, You already have like almost 2/3 of what you need for a tower defense game. We already have the enemies, we already have the path that you can modify however you want. You can make this a little bit bigger, smaller, or you can do something on the lines of after this. I wanted to also be kind of like a small narrow thing here, thingy. Hmm. Something like that, something like this, and something like this, possible, and that's going to be a completely different level. Okay, let's see if that works actually. So I don't want it, and of course it doesn't work. Yes, just when I tried like the gigantic one, that doesn't work, and when I try the one that looks that should work, that doesn't work. Of course, that's how it works for demos. And when I'm doing things that are live, I hear someone laughing, and that's of course my luck. Ah, come on, this is awful. Yeah, like okay, I'm going to just delete these ones and move this here. And well, I think it's this one that is too narrow down here. Yes, it was that one. So that's what I did wrong. Is this one that he made it too narrow? There you go. So it was that one. So that could happen. At least I was able to prove that sometimes you're going to have to deal with that. Also, you can see that sometimes here in the corners, depending on the shape, it does not take that into consideration. But well, you can adjust your animation and also the pathfinding behavior to find the correct thing. But that's something that we can do in future sessions if you want. So that was the labyrinth. That was our maze. So now we are going to get into the towers or turrets, of course, because like I mentioned, these people are British, so they like to call it a little bit different. So this one is a little bit more complex, not by much, but uh, we have again to create a new sprite that's going to be used for our tower. We have to give it a behavior just like what we did with the enemies. It's just that, of course, it's a different behavior. Then we have to say like, these are your enemies, and then we're going to need bullets because that's something that we haven't created yet. So let's start one step at a time. So first one, create a new sprite. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to say sprite. I'm going to put it over here, whatever. And let's make it, I don't know, like this blue, and this one I'm going to make it a little bit different. Let's see, something like this, and then a different color, something like this. Well, I think the background is white, so I don't think it's going to work so well. So something like this. This is going to be my little turret, which you can tell that is awful, but it's going to work for our purposes. And it's going to help me to illustrate the entire, well, I don't know how to do it here. Gosh. Okay, it's going to be awful because I don't know how to select the point, the different image points. So, that's going to be interesting. So I guess I'll have to avoid that. So that's going to be my tower, and it's gigantic. So I'm going to make it smaller. And I'm going to make it start here. So step 1 is done. Step 2, I forgot. Give it the turret behavior. Okay. So we pick our tower. We go to the behaviors just like what we did before. We add new behavior, and this one, we're going to stretch the window for data. Is it there? It is there? Okay, well then I'm going to try that. Is it? I don't see it. Wow. Okay, that's something that I'm going to owe you. That's why I cannot like emphasize that it was a better. So we're going to just leave it at that. Okay. So this one has a turret behavior. So if I try the game right now, I think my tower is not going to do a thing. It's just going to lay there. Why? Because right now it's still below the dropper. Okay. Okay. So below. Okay. We can check that. I can see the on the chat window. I can try it after this. But we're going to do this right now. We see that my tower is not doing a thing. So what do we need to do? Recognize my enemies. So this is something that we're going to again have to do here on the event sheet. I am going to add an event, and this would be great to do it right at the beginning of the game, at the start of the game. Yes. Okay. Yes. I'll do the crosshair thing in a second. So system start of layout. So basically, this is telling me at the beginning of the game, do this thing, right? So what we want to do is to pick the sprite that I haven't renamed it. I should name it tower or something like that. And we can find that there are, again, actions for the turrets. So we can pick out of this. So let's see if I pick the correct one. Because there is like two that are quite similar. I think this is the wrong one, acquire target. The one that we want is add object to target. So acquire target is only going to work for one instance of the enemies. So one specific enemy. So when we have like multiple enemies like we have in this game, it's not going to work. So we need this one. So you have to be careful. I remember one time that I was trying to do a small demo and it was not working at all, and it's because I picked the wrong one. So, and they are one right next to the other. So it's acquire object to target. And it's going to ask you which object, and in this case, of course, is the enemy. And just because it annoys me a lot, I am going to change the name of the sprite to tower. Now, if we try this, you're going to see that my tower is beginning to detect the enemies, is beginning to follow the enemies, and it begins to aim at one of the enemies. But it's not shooting. That's the part that we're missing, right? So create bullets to go, well, when it's time to shoot. So I should have something that is called bullet time. So we need a new sprite that is going to be the bullet. Then we need to give it a behavior. So if you begin to notice here, there's kind of like a pattern there. You create something new, you give it some sort of behavior, and then you begin to tune it with events. And then we have to spawn them from the towers, which we have already done before. That is a spawn. So I'm going to go back to my layout. I am that lazy that I'm going to just copy this one that we did before. And of course, clone object type. I'm going to move it here. This one doesn't have any behaviors, so I'm going to call it bullet. And I am going to give it the bullet behavior. So behaviors, add new behavior, and we search for bullet. So the bullet is just going to move in a straight line, with whichever speed you give it here. That in this case is 400. So you can modify that if you don't want the bullets to go fast enough or whatever you want. So now the bullet is there. So what is the next step? We already did the bullet behavior. We need to span them from the towers. So we are going to go back to the events. We're going to add a new event. And this is going to be something that affects the tower. And the tower has a few events that have to do with turrets or towers. Is that it has target, on shoot, or on target acquired. So the one that we need is on shoot. Again, if you want to look for it, just start typing shoot on the search box and it should work. So if we go to the tower for a second and we look into the behavior, you're going to see that there are several things that we can also customize, like the range, the rate of fire, and the rotation, the speed rotation. So those are things that at some point we will have to change. And the rate of fire, if you click here, it tells you at the bottom the time to shoot in seconds. So this means that it shoots every second. If you want to make it slower, you could say like 2, so that means it shoots every 2 seconds. If you want to make it faster, 0.5, for example. So we're going to give it at 1. And this rate of fire is the one that is affecting the unturret turret shoot. So every second is going to trigger this event, and we have to do something. What is that? Spawn a bullet from the tower. So I am going to add an action that starts with the tower, and it says spawn another object that we already did before. In this case, the object that we want is the bullet, that perhaps I should change the color so we don't mix it with the gold. And that's pretty much it, at least for the moment. I'm going to change the color of the bullet. I'm going to make it, I don't know, a weird gray or something. Darker gray. That's good. Now let's see if this works. And now it begins to shoot, right? So I am going to do a couple more things, and then we're going to polish a little bit what we have right now, and then I am going to follow the advice of Lost Dog, that is to check on the editor for the tower or the turret. So what do you guys think it will happen if I make another instance, not clone it, but if I copy this tower? Do you think it's going to work like the original one worked? Well, if I did it all right, it should. So let's see. I can do Control C. Okay, try again. Okay, the browser. Okay, then I'm not going to do it like that, especially since I'm in a Mac. If you're on Windows, you can say Control Drag. In a Mac, you're going to say Command Drag. And I can make a couple of copies of my towers. So if I did everything right, all the towers should detect the enemies, and all of them should start shooting at their own enemy when they get in range. Okay? So, 2 things. Well, Yoo-hoo for me, like, it's great because now it seems that the towers are trying to kill the enemies. But there are a couple of things that I don't like. For one, if you pay attention to the bullets, they rarely hit the enemies. So why is that? It's for 2 things. The first one is the speed of the bullet. The enemies are moving quite fast, and the bullet is aimed basically at the position where they were. So we can improve that in 2 ways: making the bullet faster, and second, modifying the tower. And if we go to the tower, you're going to see that in the behavior, in the in some of the things that we can change on this particular behavior, there is one that says predictive aim. And then it's basically, don't aim to where the enemy is. Try to aim where you think the enemy is going to be. So if we just click on that, if we just check it, it should have a better rate to shoot my enemies. So I think you begin to see that they are beginning to hit the enemy with more accuracy. And well, of course, like I said, we can go back to my bullet. We can make it a little bit faster, I don't know, 500 or something like that, just to make certain that they always hit. One thing that also bothers me here is that the towers seem to basically work like in the entire scenario. So most that could be an upgrade or something like that. So one thing that you can do is to go to the tower and change the range and make it, I don't know, instead of 300 pixels, that is a good portion of the screen, we can make it only like 100. So they're only going to detect the enemies when they are there. So apparently that was kind of like a little slow there on detection. Or perhaps a little bigger, like let's say 200. And also the rotation speed is quite low. So let's suppose that you can completely turn in 1 second. So that should also make it quite interesting. But this is the kind of thing that you can start modifying, and that you could even change from different types of towers. So you could have like towers that are really slow to turn, so they could do a lot of damage, but in certain occasions they cannot hit the enemy so fast or whatever it is. So those are the things that you're going to tweak on your own game, on your own version of this tower defense. The last thing that I want to point is that if, and I'm going to make the bullet much slower so you can see it, I don't know, just 10. If you pay attention where the bullet is created, is basically at the center of the tower. We were not able to see it before because the bullets were too fast. So they were created here and immediately they went away. So that's what is asking us here when we are spawning a bullet about the image point. So let's go to that. Let's hope that I can get it this time. Okay, it's here. Yes, dropper. So this is the image point, and this is the other thing that I was looking before, that it was the collision polygon. So the one that I want here is this one, the image point. So thank you, Lost Dog. That was a cool thing. I was not able to see it before. So it's basically something that has to do with the editor, but here. And by default, you're always going to have an image point that is numbered at 0. And that one is going to be right smack in the middle of the sprite that you add here. So we could move it to this point, like at the tip of the cannon, but that could be a little bit of a problem because this point, the origin, is the one that is going to be used to do the rotation. So if we put it here, you're going to have a weird effect. So what we could do is to add another image point. And I think we can even rename it. So we can say like cannon or something like that, whatever it is. And you can use the number. So, and we are going to put it over here. So that looks a little bit better. And we close the editor. So now when the bullet is spawned, we're not going to say that it's on the image point 0, that's the origin. We can say directly 1, or if you remember the name, you can type it here. I don't remember if it was capitalized or not. Yes, of course I did, and I'm not going to remember. So you have to type it correctly here. And then it doesn't really matter the number. You're going to try to do it. So let's see, and did it change the speed? No. So let's see if now the bullets are spawning from the right point. And now you can see that it's trying to spawn them from the top, well, from the tip of the cannon, which is more accurate. I guess if we make the bullets much faster, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I get sometimes a little bit specific about these kind of things. So we have 9 minutes. So this is basically what I wanted to cover for this session. Yeah, that's all, folks. Yes, we will create better enemies next time or something like that. And again, I have a full series of like 15 videos or something like that just about tower defenses. So if at some point you just want to check them on your own, you can go here. Yes, this means to go help more furniture. Honeydew defense game, move furniture. Okay. Okay. So that would be a good thing. Like, what do you guys want for the next game? Do you want to continue working a little bit on the tower defense? We could do a full session around that, or we can try to do a completely different game. So I'm going to wait. I know that Space Invaders, okay, Space Invaders could be a good option for a future game. It's a classic. So what else? So I guess we can, well, I'm going to wait. Anyone else? So yeah. More tower defense, okay, that's perfect. That could be, like, tower defense gets into a lot of details. So for example, tower defense part 2, sure. One thing that we haven't checked here is like, really, now my towers are beginning to shoot my enemies, but my enemies are not dying. We haven't created like new scenarios. You have like continuous waves of enemies. We could actually create waves that it says like, hey, I'm going to create a small system of waves. Like the first wave is going to have 5 enemies. The second one is going to have 10. Mario versus Donkey Kong. Wow, that's going to be really, really, really complicated. So I wouldn't go for that. Or I would just make a 2D version of that. I could make more 10 part stream. Okay. So right now, there's a poll about what's going to be next. So I am not going to vote myself because, wow, okay, joking. Well, RPGs are quite in demand. The only thing is that I would have to decide what kind of RPG, because there are like tons of elements, like the dialogues, like how to deal with like magic systems, how to do like a full like a leveling system. So we can put some level, some of those aspects, and then anyone can take it from there. So I am going to leave it up to you. There are still several things that we could improve, even in this very sample that I have here. And tower defense, okay, 80% basically. Something else, 1%, okay. So I guess so far we can do. Let's do this. I'm going to do a second version for tower defense. So we just wrap it up, like put a few more elements into this one. I'll try to come up with something nice and perhaps also improve the graphics. So I'm going to come with some assets that we can all use. And then we can, before the end of that session, we can look into some other elements, like, I don't know, for like a small RPG or something like that. Some other elements that we could cover in other sessions. Apart from that, I am paying attention to the chat right now. Is there any question that you have about what I did today? Yeah, that's why I'm waiting. I also know. I'm talking to myself. Yeah.
You too. And so everybody else should be. Oh, here you go. How do you deploy your game?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I haven't done it with Construct 3 because, like I said, this started on beta. What do I know? Like a couple of weeks ago. So let's see. So project. Okay, so yes, so it's going to be similar to Construct 2. So in Construct 2, what you did was, well, to save your project, of course, you also quite likely you're going to need to fill some of these data, because especially some of your some of the app stores and things like that are going to need them. But in general, you just go here to project and say export. So I haven't done it with Construct 3. I know that with Construct 2, there are many options. Like I exported to Cordova. If you want to do it, basically it's going to be a JavaScript game. Everything here is JavaScript. And then you can use that Cordova project to, uh, okay, that actually sounds quite interesting. Try to do like a web export. That sounds quite good. Like try to round up a little bit tower defense and then do a little bit of example with that. The other option is going to be like a web export, and you can see, well, you have them here right now. So Cordova, so this is going to be multi-platform, JavaScript, okay. And then you are also going to have like a web version that you could upload to some servers and to play it from there. I have done that before. And you also are going to have for desktop. So if you want to do it here. So right now it seems that Construct 3 is giving you these options. I think Construct 2 gave you even more options, but I don't know if they're going to port them all. Like some of those options had to do with Windows 8 originally and then moved to Windows 10, etc., etc. Mm, custom behavior. Okay. What kind of custom behavior? That would be interesting. What do you mean about custom behavior, Robert? Because there are tons of things that you don't need to create a custom behavior. You just need to keep just adding events. In Construct 2, there was the option to create plugins. So instead of, for example, those were basically yes, you yes. Uh, so let me say it this way: in Construct 2, there was a way that you could write on JavaScript a file. So it's going to be a JS file. Well, actually, I think it's three files, and then you could add it locally to your Construct project, and it would even appear here. So you could have it like, I don't know, Robert's behavior one, and then you could add it to an enemy, or you could even have plugins. So not you can not only add behaviors to things there, but you could also say here like plugins. You could even add that. And so we have been always using Sprite, and I think we used text a couple of times. You could add or plugins or behaviors, and you could do it. They say that they are going to basically allow you to also uh, import some of these same plugins, that there are several in the community, onto Construct 3. But the thing is that right now this is in beta, so I don't know if this is something that is going to be easily done or not. If you're curious at some point, if you go to the Zero page and you go to forums, you're going to see that they have, well, a plugin for an SDK. So this is what you would do, create your own basically your own plugin, and you should have something here. Let me see. There's one that I always like, Rojo Hound, for example. Hound, I think, yeah, this is how it is. Using Rojo Hound. Where is Rojo Hound? Okay, well, Rainbow Rex. Rainbow Rex. So those are users that have created like tons, but I mean like tons of plugins, and you can find it here. So this is Mr. Rainbow Rex. Plugin Firebase. So then you can go here to his profile, and you're going to see the stupid amount of plugins that he has. No, I don't want to do that. Template, create a free website. I don't want to install them all right now. Here, so maps. So this is his own page, and you can see how many plugins he has created. So it's basically on the hundreds. Some really cool ones, for example, these ones that allow you to load CSV files, also for JSON files. So if you're creating basically scenarios, full levels, and you want to save the information on JSON format, he is giving you the chance to read that file, and then you can do it, or XML, and well, tons of things. I think he has his own pathfinding behaviors, so he has tons of things. Well, no, well, he has several about like almost everything you see, like touch behaviors, arrows, movement. So uh, this one I have tried to use a couple of times, splines. So it's quite useful, and you can find that basically here at the forum. So you just look for plugin, and I think there's even an official list. The only thing is that the company Zero, they tell you like, we don't support these things. It's basically up to you. So if at some point the creator of the plugin decides just to not work more on it, it could break after a while. You know, if there's a change in Construct 2. And like I said, I haven't tried them on Construct 3 since it's just a beta version. So that could be one thing that we could check. I think there's a lot of things that you can do on Construct even without creating your own plugins. You don't really need to code them yourself. And let me see here for a second. There was something like browser. Yes. There's another plugin that you can add directly, and it seems that it's already added there. And you could do something like execute JavaScript. So even if you don't create your own plugin, you still could execute a piece of JavaScript here. The only problem is that you need to find out exactly, and well, they are telling you here, you need to figure out how to use the SDK, how to call the objects and things like that directly from this piece of JavaScript. And also is not the most secure thing, because, well, you're, yeah. And well, that's pretty much it. I think If you guys have any other suggestions, you should go to GGDA's Facebook page and, well, ask for things. If you want to hear or delve a little bit more into something else next session, just let Andrew and every organizer there know. And apart from that, thank you very much for staying here with me, and I hope you guys have a great time.
All right. Hey, let's thank Diego. Thank you so much for your time, Diego. Please, thank you. Real quick, just to talk about it one more time, I'm not going to sing this time. Hey, if you're in Georgia, yeah, if you're in Georgia and you're developing a game and you're trying to get it Steam lit or Steam lighted, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, join the GGDA Steam Light community, Green Light community. The GGDA, we are a nonprofit organization. We do have merchandise available. I'm going to spam you with that one too. There you go. The next meeting in Atlanta is on May 9th to discuss the business and technical future of virtual reality. That'll be held in Marietta. And also, if you possibly have a workshop of your own, please reach out to us at info.ggda.org and let us know about what you might be willing to stream with us. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to next week.